This Navy vet roughed it in the woods for 11 years until he was offered a life-changing new start. Hit the subscription button and ring the notification bell. This way you'll be the first to learn about the updates that appears on Inspiring Stories several times a day. Military veterans should return from serving their country to a well-deserved life of comfort, but that's not always the case. Take U.S. Navy veteran John DeGraff, for example, who spent 11 years homeless in the woods in Boston. But luckily for him, after he appeared on television, he received an offer he couldn't refuse. Homelessness is a problem throughout the world. Indeed, according to Yale University, there are an estimated 150 million people worldwide without a place to live. Some people see these victims of circumstance as a nuisance or don't notice them at all, and they become another part of the scenery. But behind each one is a story, and how they came to be living on the streets might surprise you. Meanwhile, the exact number of homeless people in the United States is unclear. After all, it is a challenge quantifying solid numbers due to the very nature of not having a fixed abode. However, attempts to document them have been made, including from the Annual Homeless Assessment Report, AHAR. According to a 2017 AHAR study, more than 500,000 people in the USA experienced homelessness that year. And this staggering figure is actually an increase of 1% from the previous year. But what can cause a person's life to go so wrong that they lose their home? There are any number of reasons why such a fate could befall someone. And according to a 2012 study by the Williams Institute at UCLA Law, a significant number of homeless people are young people from the LGBTQ community. Reasons for this vary, but it often happens due to family conflicts which cause them to be evicted or run away. Meanwhile, young college students make up a large portion of the homeless figures, who often end up on the street due to difficulty paying housing and food bills or a lack of financial support from the family. Meanwhile, whatever the reason for their circumstances, the general public can sometimes have preconceptions of rough sleepers. They can be seen as being too lazy to work, addicted to drugs, or mentally ill, for example. And while it's certainly true that these factors can lead to homelessness, it's not a hard and fast rule. Furthermore, this perception can also lead to other undesirable behavior. That's because some people let their fear or disdain of homeless people turn into aggression. And to this end, across the U.S., violence against people on the streets has grown. Indeed, the National Coalition for the Homeless found a 30% increase in such acts between 1999 and 2005, sometimes leading to fatal results. Meanwhile, another group of people which suffers disproportionately from homelessness in the United States is the veteran community. According to author Bruce S. Jansen, more than 150,000 people from the armed forces were living on the streets in 2009, and nearly half of them served in Vietnam. Indeed, joining a branch of the armed forces is a noble cause, but it's a dangerous occupation. Those serving face the risk of suffering potentially life-changing injuries as a result of conflict or coming down with long-term mental health conditions. Clearly, physical and mental conditions can be so debilitating that they leave veterans with limited employment options. Furthermore, former servicemen and women face the risk of falling into substance abuse and family relationship breakdowns as a result of these conditions. And this can often lead to homelessness. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is one of the conditions veterans could face. Although it's most commonly linked to people who have experienced war, anyone who suffers from a traumatic event can develop the condition. It's characterized by distressing dreams, thoughts, or hallucinations that can have a profound effect on the sufferer. But, fortunately, there are numerous charities out there specifically to support people with PTSD. One of them, a UK organization called Stand Easy, interviewed some veterans for its awareness video. And they shared stories on how the condition affected their lives and revealed how it could lead to homelessness. The video featured a serviceman called Dan, who served for over 8 years in the Royal Anglian Regiment but was injured during his third tour of Afghanistan and developed PTSD. He explained in the short film, "The way I suffered most was my sleeping. It's like hallucinations between awake and sleep, and they're as real as me or you now." 24-year veteran and former Sergeant Darren Edwards also left the army with PTSD. He revealed, "I was heavily drinking to sleep and prone to violence or violent outbursts, also at work. Indeed, it's easy to see how someone could lose everything from armed forces-related illness and end up on the streets." Meanwhile, the amount of people who served their country and ended up homeless is staggering. According to the 2016 PIT estimate of homeless veterans by state, the number across the USA amounted to nearly 40,000. And where they are mostly concentrated is illuminating. The biggest population of homeless veterans in the United States is in the state of California, with more than 11,000 there, as of January 2017. Florida came in second with nearly 3,000, followed by Texas with over 2,000. Meanwhile, in Boston, Massachusetts, news reporter Bob Ward tackled the issue of veteran homelessness in a video news segment in February 2019. In an article accompanying the video, Boston 25 news reporter Ward wrote, "I live and work in an area of high-end shopping, fine dining, and expensive homes. But just 5 miles away from where I show up for work every single day, there is a completely different world." Indeed, Ward describes a world in which every day is a struggle for survival for many, and potential threats loom around every corner. U.S. Navy veteran John DeGraff lives in this invisible world and has done for more than a decade. Ward interviewed DeGraff in the video, which shows the reporter being led to what appears to be a pile of junk in the woods. But the heap of tarpaulin and branches is actually a makeshift tent that his host calls home. Inside, DeGraff stacked his possessions, some supplies of food and clothes, into the corners. "This is my bed," DeGraff explains to Ward in the video, indicating his sleeping conditions. The homemade bed, for its part, is made up of sleeping bags and rugs placed over wooden concrete forms. However, when the homeless man reveals how he keeps warm, it puts a lot of things in perspective. The video then shows Ward following DeGraff to get an insight into how the gentleman lives his life, and it's eye-opening. The latter says, "Every day, I try to grab 3 or 4 bundles out of the woods." He explains that the scavenged twigs and wood scraps are his primary method of keeping warm. In fact, DeGraff lights a fire to keep warm, but he does so inside his tent. Not only is it set up in an enclosed space, it's mere footsteps away from DeGraff's bed. And it poses a potential hazard to his health via both the smoke and the open flame should it spread. Meanwhile, the video shows DeGraff setting the fire alight while Ward is present, and the reporter remarks on the overwhelming smoke bellowing out. The journalist tells DeGraff, "I'm smelling that fire. It's filling my lungs. That smoke is filling my lungs." However, the homeless man appears to be oblivious to the danger, presumably having become accustomed to the blaze by necessity. "I've learned to sleep with a big, roaring fire, no problem," DeGraff responds. But Ward presses him, asking, "You're not worried that it could catch fire and maybe kill you?" But the homeless man simply replies, "No, not at all." Indeed, it would seem that the comfort and warmth the flames provide are preferable to the cold. Incredibly, DeGraff also reveals to Ward that he has been living homeless for more than a decade. And as the two men stand out the homeless man's tent, he former elaborates to the shocked reporter, "This is my 11th year, I've got my 12th year coming up." Meanwhile, DeGraff explains his past life in the video segment with Ward and describes how he served in the U.S. Navy in the late 1980s. The journalist then asks, You're a veteran living in a tent in the woods. That's not right." The man then responds, "Well, you know what, I don't dime for anything. I don't get food stamps or anything." Ward then asks him, "How do you feel about being out here in the woods for 11 years? And the former vet replies, "I don't know. It'd be nice to be inside." However, what the homeless man didn't know at the time was that an incredible surprise was waiting for him just around the corner. That's because Ward's Boston 25 News video segment caught the attention of Felicia Turner at Volunteers of America, Massachusetts. And the kind-hearted woman knew she had to step in. In a follow-up video segment, she tells the news station, "I'm like, wow, 11 years. He shouldn't be on the streets, so I want to help this guy. He just seemed like a humble guy who needed help." And with that in mind, Turner contacted Don Marcelino and Mike McNulty. Marcelino and McNulty are not strangers to DeGraff's situation and are seen meeting the homeless man in the original Boston 25 News segment. In fact, the two men are both members of an organization called Disabled and Limbless Veterans, DLV. The non-profit group is dedicated to assisting homeless former vets by providing them with food, water and shelter. McNulty and Marcelino can also relate on a personal level because they're veterans themselves. DLV's founder McNulty and its president Marcelino both served in Vietnam. Furthermore, the latter had 3 limbs amputated as a result of the war. They think it's terrible that people like DeGraff aren't getting the help they need, as they explained to Ward in his Boston 25 News video segment. McNulty remarks, "No veteran should be living under these conditions. These are guys who fought for their country." McNulty continues, "Why are they in a situation like this?" And Marcelino adds, "You wouldn't believe he is living like he is living in the middle of downtown Boston. It shocked me. They're out there," McNulty says of homeless vets like DeGraff in his interview with Boston 25 News. "A lot of these guys don't want to go to the shelters." Indeed, McNulty explains in the segment that he believes that there are up to 400 veterans living in the woods in and around Boston. DeGraff won't roll over and surrender, that's basically what it is, Marcelino explains in Boston 25 News video segment. "We still see people fall through the cracks just for the fact that they are stubborn and they are self-sufficient. They are proud and they won't put their hand out for anything. Nevertheless, everyone needs help sometimes." Meanwhile, Marcelino and McNulty have been taking their fellow serviceman DeGraff food and supplies and even got him into the Veterans Association. But that was just the beginning in their quest to help DeGraff turn his life around. Indeed, in February 2019, DLV's Facebook page added an uplifting post to their feed. It read, "After more than 11 years of living in the woods, Navy veteran John DeGraff agrees to relocate to temporary housing at the Volunteers of America Veterans Center. And this changed everything for him, as Boston 25 News reporter Bob Ward soon found out." Reporter Bob Ward caught up with DeGraff at the shelter to see how he was acclimatizing to his new home. In the new follow-up video segment, he asks the Navy vet, "What was it like when you first saw this room?" And DeGraff responds, "I was almost ready to cry." And his rescuers have noticed the transformation too. Marcelino, who, along with McNulty, had the pleasure of showing DeGraff where he'll be staying, tells Boston 25 News that the difference is remarkable. He says, "He's a changed man in 24 hours. He is different than he was yesterday, a shower, a clean bed, a nice warm room. And now DeGraff's physical needs are catered for, the emotional healing can begin." Indeed, the center has a therapy program on site designed to help veterans adjust to the civilian life. Its director, Anthony Joseph, explains to reporter Ward that DeGraff's life will be very different going forward and it'll take quite an adjustment. DeGraff is going to have to learn how to live in an atmosphere that's totally safe, Joseph explains in the Boston 25 News video. Because where he's been, he's living in an atmosphere that is unsafe. Anything could happen at any time. Here is DeGraff, who put the uniform on to defend his country. He doesn't belong living in the woods, McNulty continues in the video. And for his part, the former is grateful that there was a helping hand out there. He concludes, "It's great, because I know there are a lot of good people out there. A lot of decent people." We hope you enjoyed the video. Please let us know which one of these stories you found the most interesting. And if you like the video, click on the subscription button and turn on notification so you will be the first to know when we put out a new video. We thank you for watching, and we hope to see you next time.